Welcome to the next episode of Becoming a Post-Growth Planner, Challenges and Obstacles to Changing Roles and Practices. Today, I have two guests with me, both sitting in Münster in Germany.
Okay, I'm Le-Lina Kettner. I'm part of the working group of sustainability and spatial planning in the Institute of Geography here in Münster, and I'm concerned with the forces of persistence in social ecological transformation processes in planning.
And I'm Samuel Mössner, and I'm a professor for geography, but I'm teaching planning and in a department of geography, which is kind of a strange combination, but it makes totally sense because we are bridging the gaps between spatial planning and geography.
We immediately jump into a recent experience that you've made and something that's really practical right next door to you. You were part of an urban living lab, the Correns Lab, and you made quite some experiences with what it means to temporarily change a street.
Yeah, we made very interesting experiences in this project. It was a transdisciplinary project, and we worked with the city marketing as well as the planning department together, and they called it traffic trial, classified as a traffic test, which kind of comes from the European discourse about car-free inner cities and sustainability. Our students created conceptual-led ideas of sustainable, just, and livable quarters. In the beginning, it was framed as an urban living lab, which have been implemented in the planning as a promising tool for experimenting the transition towards more sustainable cities. So it offers post-growth planning advantages, like as an experimental tool. And well, the interesting thing was that the position of planners, which in Münster is kind of special because the Münster marketing has a special role in planning here. And they framed themselves like the enabler. We make your project possible. And so they didn't want to get involved in terms of content. And they were only responsible for the road closure. And meanwhile, we observed very concerned bosses about this very new way of city making. And so the conditions were experimental, and we were practicing post-growth ideas in the city, like circular economies and knowledge transfer at a very low level. But the implicit worries on the other side influenced the process strongly. And yeah, this is kind of the connection to the obstacles of post-growth planning here, I would say.
The very interesting thing is that we're trying to break out of these established routines in terms of teaching, in terms of planning, and in terms of collaborating also. And by doing so, we were challenging also the routines and the modes of interaction the city administration had. So that was all a mess at the beginning, and nobody of us knew what the end could be and could look like. And that was quite challenging for all participants, for the city administration as well as for us.
Yeah, you've mentioned that you got quite some support and you were enabled to do that by the city of Münster, but there were also quite some concerns or implicit worries by some people, public officials, I guess. Can you explain in more detail what were these worries? So what did they worry about, or what were they uncertain about?
Well, the whole process of transforming this part of the city started as a traditional planning process driven by our politicians and the city administration, and it was involving also for planning agencies from Copenhagen, Berlin, and so on. And they were all making their ideas about how this part of the city should look like. And our concern was in our drive. Well, our idea was to jump into it and then to tell them, well, look, our students that are living here, and they spend most of the day here in this neighborhood. We do spend, in fact, more time here than at home. And so we want to participate in a way. And well, the official form of participation was more in terms of information, and we were not quite amused and we were kind of surprised of what has been presented before. Then we jumped into it and said, we bring the local knowledge here on the street, and we bring us on the street, and we want to take part. We want to join your game without being invited. And I think if you try to do this and you self-invite yourself to a party, it's going to be a good experience. But the first reaction was, who invited you?
And then?
And then the whole process went on. And I think the result is that the city administration was kind of, and the public opinion, so to speak, they were kind of positive about the result. And we noticed clearly the differences between planning by local knowledge and planning by planning agencies who come from abroad or from other cities and plan and experiment their plans and do their plans. So yes, I think there are different objectives that come along with the Currents Lab, and the 3 days on the street is just one objective, and I think that was a success. And then we have a lot of other objectives we have in mind, and we are still in the process of reaching them.
To make it clear to our listeners, the Current Street is just in front of your building, so it's where many students come along the street to visit lecturers, to visit you, to have workshops and so forth. So these are actual users of the street, which is very much made for cars, as I have also experienced it. During this process, what did you learn then about today's spatial planners?
Yeah, that was something I wanted to say with the experimental way of acting that they were identifying themselves with, but by saying we don't want to tell you what to do, you can do, we are just giving you money. And inside this whole process, we were still acting in old logics and growth-oriented logics. And when we question what is success in this whole project, every actor will have a different answer.
Well, I think we should just explain to the listeners that so this was an alliance of the university, of the applied university, and the city, and they all came together. But in fact, it was not they all who came together, but it was just a part of the city administration who joined in, and that was city marketing, who is part of the city administration, but plays a kind of a different role than traditional planners do. We did not have too much contact to the mainstream planners, whether urban planners or mobility and transportation planners. That was really low level. So our partner was basically the city administration and so the city marketing. And that was first a big surprise to me, because I thought, well, when these institutions come out in the street and they do something, then maybe the urban planners jump into and they do something. And I think my experience was they were just waiting and looking at us and waiting until they see the output, because it's too experimental for them. And city marketing, and of course they had sometimes the same and sometimes different objectives with the Currents Lab than we had, but they were at the end able to deal with that insecurity of experimenting planning. Yeah.
They were able to deal with it because we were like forming the whole project kind of into their logics.
Yeah, we were joining these logics. Yeah, I think that's true. And this is still the difficult process for us now to, and of course we had an academic and a scientific and also critical planning related objective, and it's hard to communicate this critical idea of urban transformation to a city marketing group whose task is to marketize the city. So you have, at a certain point, you have to come together and to go on that street together for a few days. And I think it's now our task to reflect on the whole process and then to develop our critical ideas out of it.
Did planners join the efforts during these 3 days or afterwards, or was any of that more taken up even, let's say, after it happened, after it was visible what it meant, which direction it could take?
Well, I think, city marketing, and they were great and were a great support for us. And without this group of city marketing, we wouldn't have been able to implement the whole process. But the planners were not there, basically. I mean, very few of them. And then after the Currents Lab has been defined as success, now in urban planning, the Currents Lab becomes more a kind of a slogan. It's sometimes scaring, actually. We were just talking before preparing here all these technical things here. We were talking about in which contexts the Currents Lab has been mentioned, and it kind of scares us because, I mean, we started with the idea of an urban transformation. And a claim for participation, a claim, by the way, which we did not fulfill ourselves, but we wanted to take part. And so we had a big idea. And then now we see where the Currents Lab became kind of a brand mark, or like a fixed idea by the city administration. And then we see, wow, is that our Currents Lab? Is that really what we wanted? And that's kind of scary sometimes.
This is an interesting moment in this whole process for me.
Yeah.
And as you see, we are still reflecting every day.
Yeah, that's rather the opposite of what you would expect, that it's not marginalized or put aside, but internalized as some factor of other policy around. But from looking a bit back, would you say what could have helped to kind of strengthen a bit your original idea and to enable maybe also even post-growth ideas to better perform or maybe stick better in the whole process?
Well, I think we were starting from a kind of naive starting point because, to be honest, I did not have. I'm an academic. I can write articles and I can write books and I can teach 90 minutes, but I'm not trained to bring. I'm not an activist in my life, and I was not trained to bring this to the street. And I'm not good in collaborating on these political levels. And I think that was the naive point where my ideas got easily absorbed and hijacked in a way, not in that negative way, but sometimes in a negative way, sometimes in a positive way. They got hijacked by the reality of the living lab. And I think this is something. I mean, we had debated a lot about our ideas and we had debated during the process. We were also debating about the post-politicization of the living lab. But I think what we were not able was during these 3 days to make a point and to claim and to counteract against the depoliticization of our thing. And that's something we should maybe, if we would ever do this next time, I would say that should be a discussion before how to, well, it would be easier now because we know these people.
Yeah.
And we know the situation, and it was very easy to work together with them, and I'm very thankful for that support. But at the same time, I would say now, since we know better their logics, their vocabularies, and their ideas, it's probably easier for us to place our ideas next to them. Does it make sense?
Yeah, then we got to a productive way of activism or of conflicts in this part. I'm still searching the conflict moment. I don't have an answer to this, but it was in the reflecting process, it is a huge conflict in general, but the conflict wasn't visible in this moment. But yeah, maybe we should do this more often, like transdisciplinary working, transdisciplinary project with students, with city policymakers, and as well administration. But I think maybe out of this trust that we build now, there can be a productive way of dealing with conflicts now. And this is kind of the learning process is what we can deal with now. And
well, we learned it,
So our podcast is on becoming a post-growth planner. So you've learned quite a lot during the past month on what works, what doesn't work, and also on the obstacles that you've faced when getting in touch to traditional ways of doing urban planning. Maybe from all these experiences, do you have some advice, kind of what is needed, what is supportive of making a move towards post-growth? Or what do also planners need to be enabled to do this kind of move?
Well, from my perspective, we started in a very contested field of urban planning, which is the mobility transition that is related to the urban transition. It's related to participatory approaches to urban planning. So it's particularly here in Münster, this is very contested because there's not a huge transition on participatory planning. It's my perspective, at least. And participatory tools are more informational tools here in the city. And we were not able, as we said before, to address the moment of contestation during these 3 days. So what I learned and what I'm thankful for also is that we do have time and we do have the space to debate these issues after. So what I've learned so far is never stop after the Living Lab ends. This is when critical planning starts. And maybe it should start earlier during the Living Lab or during organizing and doing the Living Lab. But in any case, it starts after, and reflection is very, very productive and very, very important. And it's also important that we don't do this here in this room and in our ivory tower, but we go out and reach out. And the trust Le-Lina has mentioned before is very important. The level of trust we build during these days. So we are able, and I think I feel empowered to go out to the city administration to reflect together with them. And actually that's what they demand also. They want us to reflect. So we would really fail if we just stay here and say, hey, that was nice. 3 sunny days. Well, just 1 sunny day with Münster, but 2 rainy days, but 3 nice days, and that's it. So this is what I'm personally carrying on, and what I think it's really important. And the other thing is what is important is what was really great in this experience is to work together with people who have the capacity to critically reflect on things, which is you and other colleagues who work together.
And what reactions did you observe on the street by people walking by other students, other colleagues from other departments, other faculties maybe?
This is the one moment that I reflect as a very political moment, is that when we had a discussion with city administrations on the stage, like for everybody to listen, and then there was the moment when our students were asking questions, and there was I don't know, courage in one moment, because it was a project that was lasting like 2 semesters. Everybody was working just for this 4 days. So much time was spending on this target we faced. But then there was this discussion, and everybody was emotionally loaded. I don't know how to say. It was very emotional in one, and then they stood up and raised questions to people they never talked to before, and people who are making the policies here. And that was the moment where I felt like, oh wow, we had kind of influence to people like our students, and they were like kind of empowered in this moment. And that was the moment for me when I realized, okay, maybe we didn't influence the whole planning process, but we are teaching activism in some kind of way.
And critical thinking. I mean, they jumped in a moment where we failed. Well, or that's talking about me. Not we failed, but I failed. I was sitting in that, and I was part of that discussion group, and I failed to address critical questions because I don't know. I mean, that's what I mentioned before. Because I'm totally okay to debate in an academic context, and I'm trained to doing so. But I'm not that much trained to make critical points in these contexts, which are strange to me. And then our students jumped in, and I was really impressed by this. They were asking the questions we did not ask, and that was a moment of embarrassment, of course, deep embarrassment actually, and at the same time also I was very proud of them, and that was great.
Yeah, so I would say this means that universities have a huge role in such change, but especially not only staff and lecturers, but in particular also students as a major part of university that can even be more critical than some others because of their wide eyes on different parts of the urban life.
I think that this was the logic I said, that if you're in a special position in this whole process of the project, like you were, it's a kind of different thing how you act in a discussion, and this is when logics are taking over. Even if you're in the university, you are the critical professor and teaching critical theory or planning theory or stuff, but if you're on the street, you are someone else, kind of, because
I mean, you teach your whole life all these critical things, and then you invite Lord Mayor, and Lord Mayor comes and stays 2 hours on that ground, and I was so happy that he was here, and I was feeling like a host, and I tried to be polite, and he was a very, very nice guy, and also great that he was talking to everybody, to all students, and he took a lot of time discovering a little bit what we've done, but at the same time, that's probably not the moment where you come back to your critical questions and your critical thoughts, and then you jump into debate and then so on. I mean, that's just the wrong moment for me, at least. I don't know, that was challenging. That was really challenging.
So you had quite some different roles at that moment. You mentioned you were a host. You're on the way to become activists. You were a bit kind of interested in changing to a certain direction, implementing some post-growth.
We were representatives of the university. We were part of the alliance together with the applied university and the city. We were teachers. We were there was a lot of things going. We were exhausted. You were exhausted. You worked so much for the basic things: where to put this tent, where to put that tent. how to manage the corona regulations and so on and so on. And then at the same time, you should be a critical planner as well. That's really difficult.
Yeah, so you've experienced quite a lot what it means not only to talk about change, but to do it right next door. And even if it's for a few days, what it can deliver, but also which obstacles occur just from bringing practicalities together on speaking out in critical voices also to the public, to politicians, and also then finding words that really deliver a message, which remains a challenge, I believe. If we take that to what's a final statement, maybe from all your experiences that you've gained in Münster, but also other locations, can you come up with finalizing the statement post-growth planning is?
My position is not so connected with the current lab now, but I think that the actual mission of planning is to weigh the common good. And at the moment, it's well, the moment lasts now a few decades, but the role changed to become a new liberal child that only reacts on issues or pretend to act in the sense of common good, because common good became equal to growth, kind of. And entrusted with this task, planning for me gets a more important role to react actively, and there we have the activism again, against growth coalition and re-establish values of livability and justice in our city and the rural areas as well. And what I mean is that, yeah, planning could formulate targets of being not profit orientated and focusing directly content of sustainable ways and solutions that are not hidden behind a veil of injustice. And as a second order practice, like acting on other practices, it can never be passive in a way, and it's in every moment political, and should be aware of that. And that's why I'm dealing with planning, because a little kind of hope inside of me is there that we have planning to kind of act or challenge capitalism, and this is what's my little activism in my projects are forced by.
That makes sense to me. Well, I guess post-growth planning is for me working and constantly working on the hegemonic order that is that makes our society. So, in terms of or from a post-political critique or a perspective of a post-political critique, I would say it is the constant pushing the borders of what is possible, or what seems to be possible, towards any direction, and to accept in the same time that sometimes there are very, very small steps in pushing these borders or working on these borders, and sometimes you don't work on it. It's just like you are within that bounded, and then that's okay as well. It's not a failure, a general failure. Post-growth planning is it's a continuous process, but you always need to try at least to push these borders a little bit further.
Thank you. So thanks a lot for letting us participate into your experiences, into what it means to take on also practical activism if you teach critical thinking, what it means to get in touch with local politics, and what experiences you also made when connecting with different departments of the city of Münster. So thanks a lot to Le-Lina, thanks a lot Samuel for being part of this episode today, and thanks to all our listeners as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.